Is the housing market going to crash? With all the doom and gloom in the media, it's not surprising that people do sometimes ask whether or not the housing market is going to crash. Affordability is at an all-time low. Prices for homes seem to be at an all-time high on a monthly basis. Something's got to give, right? Surely the market is going to crash. Well, here are some reasons why that is very unlikely to happen. I'm Brian Quinlan. I'm a realtor in the Indianapolis area talking all things real estate. If you're looking to buy or sell a house in Indy, I'm your guy. Drop me a message, subscribe, shoot me a comment, whatever works for you, we can get in touch. There's also a link in the show notes if you want to get in touch with me. The first reason is foreclosures are still below pre-pandemic levels. A lot of people like to point back to 2008 when the market crashed. Foreclosures were one of the big causes of that market crash, and a lot of that had to do with the financing. The rules around mortgages were significantly different in the early 2000s. Back then, it seemed anybody could get a loan for any amount for a house, so people got in over their heads in the early 2000s. A lot of people bought homes with mortgages they ultimately could not afford. Adjustable rate mortgages, also known as ARMs, were very prevalent back in the early 2000s. An adjustable rate mortgage has the opportunity to adjust up or down in a given year, and that can change from year to year. Well, in most cases, those ARMs wind up going up every year. It's great at first because you can get into a house at a significantly lower interest rate with the possibility that it could go even lower if things change in the future. Well, more often than not, they went up. And in 2008, they went up. And they went up enough where people couldn't afford their homes. They were already struggling before the interest rates went up, and now the rates went up, making their mortgage payment higher on a monthly basis, and people just couldn't afford the homes, so they ultimately had to get foreclosed on. And those foreclosures flooded the real estate market, thus causing an economic crash or assisting in the economic crash of our country. So a lot of homes were available. A lot of people lost their homes in the foreclosure process, and ultimately the real estate market crashed out. We are not anything like that here in 2025. Back in 2020, when the pandemic hit, real estate kind of went off the rails for about 2 years. Interest rates dropped significantly, trying to help the country recover from the economic crisis caused by the pandemic. And so they lowered interest rates to try and get people to stimulate our economy. Great for those who wanted to buy houses, bad for those who wanted to buy houses. I'll explain. The lowering of the interest rates caused a flood of people into the market looking to buy a house at a rate anywhere from 2% up to maybe 5% if you were unlucky. So there were a ton of buyers in the market, but not enough people who wanted to sell their house because it was so hard to find a home to buy if you were to sell your house. In our current situation, we still have a situation where we have more buyers than there are homes available for sale. So prices are going to stay high. The difference this time as compared to 2008 is that the people who own the homes, many of them have a mortgage rate between 2 and 5%. They're not in a market where they're just going to randomly sell their house because they're going to wind up giving up that phenomenal mortgage rate to get into something that's probably significantly higher. We're seeing the people who list their homes are listing them because they have a reason to move. Job location, family situation, any number of factors can cause people to move, but it's less likely that it's just because they want to move. So we're in a situation where we're not having a lot of foreclosures, but we still have a demand for people who want to buy houses, and so thus we're not going to see a crash because of foreclosures. Reason number 2 it's not going to crash, mortgage lending standards are a lot stronger. Now I already talked about this a little bit, but back in 2008, anybody could seemingly get a loan. No verification, very little background check, very little income requirements, and loans were being given to people with credit scores that were lower than they certainly are now. In the current market, and because of what happened in 2008, mortgage restrictions are significantly more strict. A lot of times, credit scores have to be higher. Yes, there are loans where people with 600 or so credit scores can get approved for a loan, but in most cases, you have to be nearly 700 on your credit score, if not higher, in order to qualify for a loan. So we're having people borrowing money that are in a much better financial situation than what happened back in 2008. Third reason, today's homeowners have more equity. Because of the pandemic real estate market of 2020 through 2023, essentially, the value in homes has gone up significantly. So without having to sell, without having to pay down a significant amount of someone's house, they have gained equity just because the value in homes has gone up significantly as prices for homes have increased. So today, as opposed to 2008, homeowners have way more equity in their house. In other words, they own more of the house, which puts them in a much stronger financial situation. Again, back in 2008, people were not only getting loans for homes that they really had no business getting a loan for, but they were also getting home equity loans without much background check, with no verification or qualifications required. And now they had the loan for the house, in other words, their mortgage, and they now had a home equity loan on that house. So they had two payments they had to be making towards their house. And again, when rates shot up, people could not afford it, thus they lost their house. Today, with the financial position that most homeowners seem to be in, the likelihood of someone losing their house because the value isn't there, significantly low. Before I get to that final reason, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. And if you need any assistance buying or selling a house in the Indianapolis area, go down in the comments, hit that link to get on my schedule, and we can talk about it. Okay, so the fourth and final reason that it's unlikely we're going to have a market crash has to do with supply and demand. Here in the Indianapolis area near the end of February, we're looking at months of inventory at about 2.5 months of inventory, which means we are in a seller's market. Regardless of what the national media says, the Indianapolis market is still significantly hot for sellers. In order for it to be a balanced market, we have to have 3 to 4 months of inventory. If we get over 4 months of inventory, then we shift into a buyer's market. So as of now, here in the Indy area, we're still seeing more buyers in the market than there are homes for sale. So sellers are still at a significant advantage. Now we are seeing that we are seeing that level off to a certain degree because we are nearly balanced. But so far, we're still at a point where there's more buyers than sellers, which means demand is higher, which means price negotiation is still a thing. We're still seeing some multiple offer situations. And right now, home sellers are getting on average about 97% of their list price when it comes to the final closing price. So sellers are still doing really well when it comes to the price of homes, which means the market is strong. So here in the Indianapolis area, until things shift, it's very unlikely that we're going to see any type of a market crash. Have you got a friend whose conspiracy theorist uncle won't stop yelling about a housing market crash? Send them this video and have them give me a call. I'd love to talk to them.